At a high-stakes global summit, world leaders gathered to shape Africa's future without truly listening to African voices one by one. Officials made their pitches trade deals dressed as favors, aid laced with conditions and speeches soaked in quiet arrogance. Then Ibrahimtraore stood no podium, thumping no theatrics, just one sentence, calm, clear, and devastating. The room froze, and then history was made. Every African president stood up and walked out, leaving the world's most powerful nations in stunned silence. What did he say? And why did it shake the very foundations of global diplomacy? This was the moment Africa changed the rules. Yes, diplomat, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you all to Geneva. Today's summit is about partnership growth, mutual prosperity. We prepared a comprehensive initiative, $120 billion in new development packages for infrastructure, healthcare, and governance programs across sub-Saharan Africa. French delegate, with full respect, of course, in the shared belief that Africa must rise with responsible guidance. President of Kenya softly to Traoré. They always dress the leash in silk Traoré. Quietly, it's still a leash. British minister, we propose a continental smart grid managed by our engineers for the first phase. Data flows will be monitored jointly. Transparency is key. President of Senegal and ownership. British minister, the digital infrastructure will of course remain under our security oversight. For stability, President of Ghana, meaning yours, not ours. Moderator will move to the African bloc, next President Traoré. You're on the speaking list for this afternoon. For now, let's proceed to financial mechanisms. IMF representative, we're prepared to restructure existing African debt at a discount pending participation in our reform framework. It includes new oversight panels and real-time access to government expenditure data. Traoré still seated. So you offer freedom in exchange for supervision, U.S. diplomat. Ignoring, we believe this framework empowers governments to make responsible choices. You chairperson, visibly uncomfortable. Let's remember the goal here. Cooperation, not division. President of Nigeria, muttering they want receipts for every coin they lend, but can't account for centuries of extraction. German delegate, we're also proposing a new green partnership will help Africa reduce emissions while we continue to meet our industrial targets. Everyone does their part. Traoré to Ghanaian. President, is that not the same line they used when they promised us climate funds? 15 years ago, President of Ghana, and now they say we must give up coal, but they drill oil in the North Sea. Moderator, before we break for lunch. One last proposal from the European Investment Group. Then we'll hear from President Traoré after the break. EU investment official, we offer a $10 billion package to support governance reforms, judicial efficiency, and media development. Independent media is vital for democratic accountability. President of Uganda, yes, free media, as long as it says what they like. Traoré, finally rising enough. Moderator, startled President Traoré. We had your statement scheduled after Traoré. I won't need a statement. He walks slowly to the podium. Eyes from every table follow the translators, rush to adjust their feeds. Cameras zoom in. He surveys the room briefly. Then he speaks. Traoré, if your aid comes with chains, then you're not partners. Your wardens. Silence, deep cold. He steps back for a few seconds. Nothing happens. Then President of Namibia pushes his chair back, stands silent, walks out. President of Kenya follows, then Senegal, then Ghana, Nigeria, Algeria, Chad, Cameroon, Mali. One by one, every African head of state rises without a word and leaves. The cameras remain rolling. The room watches frozen as the entire African delegation walks out in unity. Us diplomats softly, what just happened? French delegate shaken. I think Africa just left the building inside the Geneva Conference Center. The silence hung like fog. The seats once filled with African heads of state now sat empty. The world's most powerful nations, for the first time in decades, had been left talking to themselves. Us, a diplomat. Are they coming back? Moderator, we're reaching out through diplomatic channels. No response yet. French delegate adjusting his tie. This is absurd. One sentence. He said one sentence. British minister, and that one sentence undid 30 years of policy frameworks. German delegate, you don't get it. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a mirror behind closed doors in a private African leader lounge across the street. President of Ghana, we finally did it. President of Kenya, We walked out, all of us. That's never happened before. A young chairperson sitting heavily. They didn't believe we would. They thought we'd fight each other for favors. For crumbs, president of Namibia. Instead, we left the table chore calmly. No, we flipped it over. President of Nigeria. They'll say it was emotional, dramatic, and African tantrum. President of Senegal. Let them say it. We're done dancing to their applause. Oh, chairperson, they're going to panic. Their news outlets are already spinning it. President of Uganda. Laughing, wait until the markets open tomorrow. They'll see Africa isn't begging anymore. Back at the summit, IMF representative, if they're serious about this walkout, it could have ripple effects across every major development contract. French delegate withdraw aid, cancel scholarships. Let them feel it, U.S. diplomats sternly. No retaliation will only validate their point. We need a strategic response moderator, like what U.S. diplomat we divide. Them reach out to their top economic allies, offer individual deals. Isolate Traoré, British Minister Traoré. Speech is already viral. It's trending in 6 continents. German delegate, he didn't just speak, he punctured something. It wasn't politics, it was dignity. Meanwhile, in a press room flooded with cameras, reporter. 1, why did all 54 African leaders walk out at once? Reporter 2, what did Traoré say exactly? Reporter 3, what's the African Union's next move outside? Hundreds of protesters gathered, but this time they weren't protesting against their leaders. Protester with megaphone today. Africa didn't ask for permission, they just stood up and walked out. Crowd chants. Stand up, walk out. Stand up, walk out inside the African lounge. You chairperson. The cameras are waiting. Shall we say something? Traoré, no, not yet president of Kenya. Why not Traoré? Let them feel the silence we've lived with president of Ghana. And when do we speak, Traoré? Looking around when we speak together. And on African soil, president of Nigeria. A joint summit, no foreign press, no international sponsors, just as a Ouagadougou chairperson. Smiling history won't forget this day, Traoré. No, but this day isn't the victory. It's the warning shot 3 days after the Geneva walkout. The world was still catching its breath. Breath stock tickers ran red across European markets tied to African natural resources. Headlines scream contradictions. African leaders abandon global summit. Traoré sparks. Diplomatic crisis, end of aid era, power shift in the global south in Washington. A high-level emergency meeting was underway. U.S. National Security Advisor. They've scheduled an emergency Africa-only summit in Ouagadougou. No media allowed, no Western observers. Secretary of State, they're forming a new economic bloc. We can't afford to lose that influence. Treasury official China's watching, Russia's watching. They won't miss this chance. CIA director, neither will we. We need intel inside that summit, discreetly. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, the city of Ouagadougou prepared for what no one thought possible. A summit of sovereigns on African terms. No borrowed language, no foreign intermediaries, only African flags, African food, and African voices. President of Senegal walking into the hall. I never thought I'd see the day president of Kenya. Me neither, no reception lines, no translators buzzing in our ears. President of Namibia. Just us and the weight of what comes next. Traoré stood quietly, hands behind his back, watching the leaders enter. His mother had sent him a simple text that morning. Be careful, lions are loud, but it's snakes that bite. O chairperson approaching. Traoré ready. Traoré no, but I'm willing, O chairperson. That's enough as the summit opened. The speeches were brief. No pomp, no rehearsed statements. Each president was given 5 minutes, but they all said the same thing, just in different tongues enough dependency enough, being lectured enough, conditional aid enough, being treated as projects, not partners. President of Ghana. We must build with what we have, trade with our neighbors before strangers invest in African currency. Not the euro or dollar. President of Nigeria. We must defend our minerals, not export them raw, refine them ourselves and sell on our terms. President of Kenya. And if any of us falls behind, we lift each other. That's the Africa they fear. When it was Traoré turned to speak, the room quieted. Traoré. We didn't walk out of Geneva to make headlines. We walked out to make space for ourselves, for our dignity, for our children. The world may mock us, but we're not here to impress them. We're here to unite us. Applause, but not the performative kind. This was applause with tension, with truth. President of Uganda, they'll try to divide us one by one. They'll offer loans, weapons partnerships. President of Chad, they'll dangle scholarships for our kids, military gear for our armies, grants for our NOS's Traoré, and we'll say no together, or we say nothing, chairperson nodding. Then let's begin drafting the charter, a new bloc, economically sovereign, politically non-aligned and unapologetically African, outside the summit walls. Global newsrooms scrambled for updates, but they were shut out. The footage they used came from drones or long lens. Photographers, no statements, no leaks. Only silence reporter on air. The leaders have agreed to total media blackout. What's happening inside may change the geopolitical landscape forever in Brussels. Paris and Washington phones rang off the hook. Advisors begged for statements. Corporations issued thinly veiled. Threats noses released open letters. The pressure mounted, but none of it crossed into the summit. Traoré had made sure of that back inside. The last session of the day approached, and with it, the hardest question. President of South Africa, what if one of us breaks, takes a deal in secret, signs a side agreement? The room stiffened. Trust was the dream, betrayal was the fear. Traoré, after a long pause. Then we don't punish them, we remind them not with shame, but with the truth that unity is our only defense. If one falls, we circle back. We don't leave anyone behind. That's what the West never understood. We don't want to rule each other. We want to rise together. The second day of the summit in Ouagadougou began without ceremony, no national anthems, no ribbon cutings, no motorcades. The 54 African leaders met in a wide-open circular room, no stage, no hierarchy, everyone equal just with chairs, clean water and a single microphone passed from hand to hand. But today wasn't about speeches, it was about action. President of Botswana. We must face the elephant in the room. Currency. As long as we borrow in dollars and euros, we will forever serve those who print them. President of Ethiopia. We must explore a continental tender, an African reserve, a basket tied to our own minerals, our own output. President of Zambia. Then let us name it. Let's stop calling it a dream. Let's call it a task. Traoré didn't interrupt, he simply observed, pen in hand, writing down every idea without judgment. Some proposals were radical, some impractical, but all were rooted in one thing. Dignity. Then came the unexpected president of Liberia. Quietly, we've been infiltrated, the room stilled. President of Liberia. I received intelligence this morning. One of our own was offered a deal. $2 billion in infrastructure aid in exchange for walking out and leaking the charter drafts to foreign interests. President of Cameroon tense. Who president of Liberia, they declined the offer. I won't name them, but I share this to remind us we are not only building something new, we are defending it, and defense means discipline. Traoré. After a long silence, there will be more offers, there will be more traps. What we do here must be built on trust, but protected with structure. Let's write a covenant, not just a charter. He stood and moved to the center of the room. Traoré. We've tried treaties, we've signed pacts, they always had loopholes. This one must be different. No secret clauses, no IMF strings, no technical assistance from outside consultants. If we fall, let it be by our own hand, not by invisible ones across oceans. Applause rippled through the room, not loud but deep, a kind of sacred agreement. The sound of men and women committing to something no court could enforce, but every ancestor could witness. And then a voice rose from the edge. President of Morocco. I propose a symbol, one the people will recognize, a reminder that we are not just building policy. We are restoring soul. President of Mali. A flag. President of Morocco. No, a tree, a real one planted here, watered by each of us. The survival will mirror ours, its roots, our unity. The idea seemed simple, but it captured something ancient, something buried. Traoré nodded, then stepped outside the hall. A large baobab sapling had already been brought without his request, without announcement. A gift from the elders of Burkina Faso. One by one, each president came out, poured water from their own flasks, and pressed a hand to the soil. President of Tanzania. It will outlive us or it won't. Either way, the people will know what we tried to plant that evening. A storm rolled over Ouagadougou. Heavy rains drenched the city but spared the summit grounds, as if the sky too was watching inside the conference building. Final touches were being added to the Charter of Continental Sovereignty. Charter Secretary, we will need signatures by dawn, and we need to prepare our message to the world president of Mozambique. Will we send a press release, president of Algeria? No, we'll send a signal tray, or something quiet but impossible to ignore. He picked up a pen and signed first, then passed it down the circle one by one. The signatures came, some with pride, some with trembling hands, but no hesitation. By midnight, 54 signatures, no absentees, no vetoes. President of Rwanda, they'll call this a rebellion. President of Malawi, let them. They've always feared when we speak with one voice, Traoré calmly. Tomorrow we don't need to explain. We only need to show one act, one moment. He tapped the table. A silence fell. Then he whispered, let every embassy, every stock exchange, every capital wake up to something they've never seen before. The sun rose over Ouagadougou, not to fanfare, but to quiet resolve. There were no morning briefings, no press conferences, just silence in the corridors of power as the African leaders stood, shoulder to shoulder behind closed doors. By 9 a.m. cameras were in place. Global media outlets from New York to Beijing had been invited, not briefed, not warned, simply invited. Traoré stood at the front of the open assembly, not at a podium, but among his peers, no flag behind him, just the sapling from the night before. Now planted in view of the cameras, a single microphone was passed to him. Traoré measured calm. Good morning today. We are not issuing threats. We are not making speeches. We are simply informing the world of a decision taken by Africans for Africans. He looked across the hall. Traoré, or for too long, our sovereignty has been traded in silence. The silence ends now. He stepped back. President of Senegal, effective immediately, we withdraw support from all foreign military installations on our soil that are not approved by a unified continental council. President of Angola, we are suspending participation in all loan programs whose terms were written in secrecy and forced in courts outside our continent. President of Ghana, and we are establishing a joint African currency reserve backed by our own resources, our own production, and our own trust. Each statement was short, no preambles, no lengthy defenses, just facts, but it was Traoré who closed the moment. Traoré, one more thing for those who ask, how did we arrive here? How did this unity happen? So suddenly, didn't it took centuries of suffering, decades of deception, and now finally a moment of clarity? He paused, then turned to face the press gallery. Traoré, if sovereignty makes us enemies to those who once called themselves our friends, then perhaps they were never our friends. Then came the moment that would be replayed on every network. Traoré, or folded the charter, placed it on the central table, and simply said, we're done asking. Silence then, in perfect choreography, unrehearsed, but understood. Every African head of state stood up and walked out one by one. They exited the chamber. No one waited for applause. No one looked back. The press was stunned, microphones still hot, cameras still rolling. The world watched as 54 leaders in suits and traditional wear strode past the global media, not in defiance but in dignity. Outside, a crowd had gathered, ordinary citizens, farmers, students, workers, not to protest, to witness. As the leaders emerged, the crowd parted. No one cheered. Instead, they stood in silence, a human corridor of respect. Then a woman stepped forward, elderly, barefoot, holding a small clay bowl of water. She poured it at the roots of the sapling, knelt and whispered something no microphone caught. But Traoré heard it this time. Let it grow, and he nodded. By nightfall, the footage had been played in over 100 countries. Analysts fumbled for words. Western diplomats called for emergency meetings in Washington. A former ambassador muttered, they didn't walk out on us. They walked towards something we can't control. In Paris, an aide asked, what do we offer now? No one had an answer, but across the continent, from Cairo to Cape Town, the mood was different. Not celebration, not triumph, but awakening. A new map had been drawn. Not on paper, but in the minds of millions. A map with no borders, just one word written in every direction, enough. And it all began with one sentence. One man and 54 others brave enough to stand beside him. Africa didn't walk out that day, it walked forward.